I started with the statistic that Black mothers are 3 to 4 times more likely to die from pregnancy-related complications than are white women. And that is a statistic that I read on the CDC website. So it's open to the public. It's open to everybody. Everybody can read it. It's heart-wrenching. It's terrifying. And sitting with that statistic in the back of my mind, there was fear.
Welcome to Who's Missing, a podcast that gets you thinking about who's missing from your world, at work and in life. Today, we're talking to Ashley January. She is an artist, an oil painter specifically, though dabbles in other mediums and is constantly curious about flexing her muscles in that arena. She also has gone through a very traumatic pregnancy and delivery of her son. And she decided to channel that into her art. She is now on a mission to address the growing crisis of the Black maternal mortality and morbidity rate in America through painting, through multimedia. Her oil portraits depict fellow survivors of traumatic pregnancies and deliveries and aim to raise awareness around the crisis that should not be. She joins us today to discuss this issue, how to be an advocate through art, how to live as an artist, and her own experiences with the trauma and how she's using that trauma to create positive change around birth equity through art. When I think of Ashley, the word that comes to mind is advocate. What a woman. I'm Emily Drake, and this is Who's Missing. It's been years, and you know what?
Yeah.
I don't know that I remember the moment I met you, but I definitely remember moments sharing space with you.
Yes.
What is your recollection?
I recall it being at UBC, of course. I just don't know.
Yes, of course.
It's just been so long. I mean, you were there in the beginning, right?
I think so. Like that. It was,
like 2010
it feels
or
like
something?
Yeah, it was like the beginning of my formalized spiritual journey. Mm-hmm. There's been so many iterations of it for me.
Right.
But I remember meeting you and Kyle and being like, these are great people. And then the Christian part of it fell away for me. But like the great people, never. Like I never forgot, right? You know?
Aw, but it was so nice of you to say. I felt the same way. I felt like there was definitely, a connection, like you just, the positivity, like you said, the great energy overall. I always felt that from you. And when we do like groups and stuff together, like it was always a warm feeling,
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Part of what I think is interesting about this podcast, the premise is how do people meet?
Yeah.
And like what is our origin story? And so inviting the listeners in a bit to know like, how does it come to me that Ashley is talking to me today? So there's a variety of ways you've come to me today, not the least of which is like what you're up to lately. So what do you think is important for people to know about you right away? Just as a woman in the world.
My top things are probably, number one, that I'm a mom to a beautiful 4-year-old boy, and he's number one in my life, alongside my husband, of course. But those two individuals are definitely my priority in my life. Another thing about me is that I'm an artist.
There will be a lot of people listening who identify as being parents, and I'm wondering what your journey is to claiming like I'm a mom. Have you had a simple relationship with that identity? Has it been complicated? What's it been like for you?
when I learned that I became pregnant, that's when it kind of sunk in. Because during pregnancy is when you really have to, even before, when you're thinking about being pregnant, at least I had to take steps in order to kind of make that happen for myself and for our family. And taking those steps beforehand and during, you kind of have to sacrifice yourself from taking care of yourself. I mean, these are good things that you got to do for yourself, but you're also doing it for the individual that you're going to be creating. So taking the prenatal vitamins, eating better, making sure you're getting good sleep, exercise, drinking lots of water, cutting back on caffeine, all these little things, all these steps that you're taking to provide the best environment for that person, that kind of starts this way of thinking that you are going to be caring for this other being. You're turning into a mother, So I think that's when it kind of sunk in for me. And that's kind of reinforced by the people around you too. That comes up in conversations, that comes up when you talk to your doctors. They refer to you as mom, nurses refer to you as mom, even before you become a mom. So that identity starts to kind of take over. And, I welcomed it because it's something that I had always wanted. And I think it was always in the back of my mind that I would one day get there. It was a little shocking at first because it's like, wait a second, my name is Ashley. I'm not mom. That's my name. Like, call me Ashley. Don't call me mom. But, that's how they identify people, in the hospital setting. So it was an adjustment, but I welcomed it at the same time.
I'm imagining the day your son calls you Ashley, like he'll be like, excuse me, little man. No, I'm mom.
Absolutely not.
So there's mom, which you claimed first. And then there's this artist who I was listening to the pre-interview with our producer, Christina, and I have the benefit of sort of hearing already and knowing and following your journey publicly as an artist and knowing that melding these identities, you arrive at this mission, and I'm going to get this right, to address the growing crisis of the Black maternal mortality and morbidity rate in America through painting and multimedia. So help us just sort of live with that sentence for a bit and maybe connect to it with your experience. So can you tell our audience about the specific challenges that Black women face with childbirth, for those that don't know?
It is a very heavy topic, and it is kind of loaded. It's something that I've had to kind of unpack for myself, and embarking on my own maternal journey. I started with the statistic and thinking about it, that Black mothers are 3 to 4 times more likely to die from pregnancy-related complications than are white women. And that is a statistic that I read on the CDC website. So it's open to the public. It's open to everybody. Everybody, can read it. And it never sat well with me reading that. It's heart-wrenching, terrifying, and sitting with that statistic in the back of my mind, there was fear going into my own pregnancy journey, and a lot of consideration and planning went into my maternal journey. So I wanted to be as informed as I could possibly be before I got pregnant, and try to build a team that would be as supportive as possible so that I could help to prevent adverse birth outcomes. In doing so, I did find a team, and I found, one of the top hospitals in Chicago to go to for my health care. And I have to say they took care of me. I tried to build a team that I felt would listen to me, because I know that is something Black women are faced with, and women in general. It is a Black maternal health crisis, but it also is a maternal health crisis in this country too. First world, we have one of the highest maternal death rates in the world. It should not be the norm. This is not something that we should accept and just go about our daily lives like it's okay, because it's happening to so many women, children, and families in this country. I wanted to talk about it. I wanted to investigate it. And as I was talking about it to my family and to friends, they listened to me and unfortunately would say things like, I know someone who's gone through something similar. I know someone, you should talk to them. And when I reached out and talked to them, they wanted to tell their story. And in listening to their stories, I wanted to use the gifts that God has given me to shed light on the issue, to uplift their voices. And so that's what my project is about, addressing these issues and not just talking about the mortality, which is the death part, but also the morbidity, which is the complications that arise during pregnancy and afterwards. Together, I'm trying to create a storytelling that's highlighting, uplifting other mothers.
Yeah. When you say something like, right, 3 to 4 times more likely to suffer complications or die, right, the mortality and morbidity, and that's like public and we can all read it, and that it's even a statistic is horrifying. So thank you. For those that didn't know, now you know. Is there anything else you want to lift up? Like if you didn't know, now you know, as it relates to the mission you have.
I want to focus on the morbidity factors. So talking about the preeclampsia, a lot of people don't know what preeclampsia is. You know, it's high blood pressure, it's hypertension during pregnancy. I wasn't really aware of it either that much. And I felt like throughout my pregnancy, there were some red flags that were happening that were probably not investigated enough. And who knows, in hindsight, perhaps if I had known more, if I had maybe gone to get another opinion, things could have turned out differently for me and my son. And so that's something I want mothers to know, is to know your baseline numbers. Talk to your doctor about preeclampsia, what you should look out for. Listen to your gut instincts. Listen to yourself. You know your body better than anybody. And for Black mothers in particular, if you think you need an additional advocate, doulas have been shown to reduce adverse outcomes in Black mothers.
I'm mindful as you're talking, and we sort of unpacked that mission, and I'm not an artist by training, but I do know that part of what is so captivating about you is even as you're talking about something that has, capital T RAUMA trauma, like this is some real stuff to walk through. I'm actually like noticing, and I know this is a different time and place than then, but like your nail color, you're wearing bright colored nails, right? And like, cause I am too, right?
I noticed that.
It's
I
spring.
was like,
let's go.
We're ready for the nice weather.
We're ready.
Yes.
And I'm reminded of something another guest said recently about indivisible opposites. And so I'd like for you just to carry with us on this theme of, talking about your story and also talking about the stories you've heard of the joy and the sadness, of the bright colors in the process along with the shadows, and how you lift up both, right? It's a both and thing. How does that compute for you or show up in your work?
Ultimately, the goal of this work is to create awareness so that other mothers and birthing people can be aware of their options and know how to better self-advocate. I'm keeping in mind the audience, the viewer. Mm-hmm. I have to use a softer palette. I have to use colors that speak to me, that make me feel joy and happiness, because it helps to balance out the heaviness and the trauma that goes into making this work and talking about the issues and bringing awareness to the crisis. Going into the studio and working on these paintings, I have to make sure I'm taking care of myself, and then also I want the viewer to be able to absorb the message. I want them to stand in front of the painting and actually look at it and try to read some of the things that I'm trying to talk about.
I think there's a lot of people who might be aspiring artists or artists right now and aren't claiming it. So walk us through what it was like for you to say, I'm an artist. When did the seed get planted and when did the expression come out of your mouth?
Well, it was overnight. Kind of a long story. Kind of a long journey for me,
Right?
It did not come overnight. I wish I had that confidence when I was younger. That's not the case for me.
You and me both, sister.
This has been an evolution. I have, always been interested in art even since I was a child, and always been drawn to crafts and, photography. I had a little Polaroid camera growing up before iPhones and smartphones and all that stuff. You would actually go and get your photos printed out at, say, a Walgreens or whatever. You'd go and pick them up a week later and you'd bring them home. And then I would use those photos to collage with, magazine clippings or newspaper clippings or whatever. And I put together, my own little collage, and I would make these little books. I never called myself an artist. I just said, oh yeah, I like doing that. I'm really good at doing that. And I decided, in high school to quit orchestra. And take a photography class and a drawing class. I was like, I'm not that great at viola. I should try something else. So I decided to take my art classes instead. And that's where I really fell in love with drawing and painting and photography. By the time I got to college, or even at the end of high school, I should back up, I was being recruited for programs, for art programs, scholarships. I just didn't have the confidence. I didn't know what I could do with that. I didn't have a mentor who was an artist who could show me, oh, this is what you do. Although I did have art teachers, I never really saw myself as a teacher. Yeah. So I decided to minor in studio art instead of majoring in it. I majored in communications and I specialized in advertising. I studied abroad my spring semester, junior year in Florence, Italy. Fell in love even more. I was able to take photography there. I took pastels. I took sculpture. But then when I graduated, reality sinks in and my parents are like, you only have 4 years. You got to support yourself afterwards. What are you going to do? So I decided to go into marketing. And I did some marketing and event planning and advertising. And that was a lot of fun. I really liked the event planning part. And learning how to be organized and plan events really, it kind of feeds part of my practice, my artistic practice now, because I have to know, all the steps and organize all the steps for putting on an exhibition. And so after doing a few years of that position, I worked as an administrative assistant in a law firm too, and thought about law school for a little bit. But then I was like, if I'm going to go back to school, I really want to go back to school for myself. Undergrad, I felt like the degree was a degree so that I could support myself. Now I want to get the degree that's going to make me truly happy. And so I started to take classes at a local atelier up north. And then after I was there for about 2 years, I had a portfolio and applied to just one school, Laguna College of Art and Design in Laguna Beach, California. I got in and was there for 2 years and got my degree, my MFA in painting. So graduated in 2017 and been working professionally for myself. I have a studio downtown at Mana Contemporary in Pilsen. And then I also, when I can't get down there, I work from home. So when I was at the atelier and I really honed my skill set in drawing and painting, and I really learned the language, that's when I started to call myself an artist. Yeah. So I think I was, 27 at the time, 28, so it's been a journey.
Ashley January's choice for this week's Spotlight is March of Dimes, whose mission is to lead the fight for the health of all moms and babies. Their goal is to end the preventable maternal health risks and deaths and preventable preterm birth and infant death, and close the health equity gap. If you want to learn more about this organization, visit www.marchofdimes.org to learn more. And now, back to the show. It occurs to me, I'm thinking about your story. I'm thinking about there's like this healing from a lack of confidence. There's this healing that happens in community with your mentors. There's this healing that then sort of through your pregnancy and giving birth. And none of this is happening in isolation. And I think there's this myth of you got to go figure it out. How do you tell the story of what kept you moving through those things? I understand some of it's survival, particularly with being pregnant and giving birth, and you really did have to survive. It seems to me part of what has kept you moving is the people who are around you, the community, and you want to create more of that. Does that track for you?
Definitely. The support of the people around me is everything. And I have to give most of the credit to my husband, Kyle. He's the one that has been there. He was the one that encouraged me to start taking the classes, because it was around the time that we were planning our wedding, and I was about to get married and kind of start this new chapter, and he was like, you should. Why not? Now's the time. Because of that encouragement, because of that support, that's a big reason why I really threw myself into it. It's good to have those supportive eyes in the audience, when you need them.
Well, I'm thinking too about people listening who have the seed of something planted when they're young, and maybe like they keep coming back to it, but don't have the support. And I'm sure you see that too. And I wonder, just as someone who sounds like a very willing member of a supportive community, like if people need support, what advice would you give an aspiring artist who people are saying like, and look, I hear this in between the lines that we were probably both raised with like, how are you going to pay your bills?
Exactly.
You can do anything, but it better pay. So what advice, for those who are looking for community or maybe feeling like this is no big deal, I'm not even going to think about it. Do you have thoughts on how to encourage other folks?
Immediately, I just think of faith really plays into it. I have a lot of conversations internally. There's a lot of doubt there, and there's a lot of rejection. It is difficult. It's challenging. You have to figure out a way to carve through it all and really navigate. But, mentorship is a big part of it. If you can find someone that can help guide you in making the best decisions you can make along your career, you kind of have to
take a deep
research.
Breath.
Yeah,
Exhale.
you gotta take a deep breath, and you gotta
It's so hard.
It's so hard. It is so hard. There are resources out there, and talking to faculty or people in the department, the academic, the financial departments that could help guide you with scholarships and other opportunities and stuff. Finding a way to make it happen. It's not going to happen necessarily the way that you think it's going to happen. If it's something that you really want to do, you have to do what makes you happy at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think it's a courageous thing. It's like to choose the thing that doesn't have maybe the steps laid out. But certainly people who've gone before you or alongside you can keep you motivated. I'm wondering then, so you get the MFA, you're painting, you're selling your artwork, right? There's like that affirmation, like this is valuable.
The selling doesn't come right away though. People don't buy right away. It takes years. It's a slow process. If you're a young person that's trying to do this, you will have to find another way to support yourself. You're not going to be able to live off your artwork solely for a while.
My mantra, I feel like lately has been like, I love my life and life is hard. And I accept both of these things, and it's like, again, the indivisible opposites, right? Because of the trauma, we get the joy. And I feel like at my age, I'm 43, what has changed is my tolerance. Of the burden, like not being like flat on my back as a result, unless in fact like it is something, medical and surgical, but like that resilience piece, I hear that in you too. You just keep with it and walk with the right people. What I'm feeling is like this momentum is building. And then I want to make sure that we get to the piece about you showing your art publicly. Was the exhibition before or during? When did that first one happen for you?
My solo exhibition. So even before I had my son, I was showing in group exhibitions. And some of them were exhibitions that I applied to. Some of them were through school or other random opportunities by other people. I didn't have my solo exhibition until last year. And so this is how many years I've been doing this? Basically since 2013 is when I went to the atelier. So that's a long time to be going until I get my first opportunity to have the solo exhibition. The more exposure you get, the more that kind of feeds into the growth of the career. I do feel like there is more momentum now, and more interest has been pouring into my artworks, and I have been selling a little bit more recently, and there are more opportunities that are coming. So it takes a long time to get to this point. It's very rare for all of these opportunities to happen all at once in the very beginning.
I sort of think it would be interesting to understand how you work with your subjects. Is it fair to say that you mostly work with people, not landscapes?
Yes, I work with individuals because we're specifically speaking to this issue of the Black maternal morbidity and mortality crisis. Each individual that I photograph and then I depict in the paintings, and then also create audio installations and now video, those individuals have gone through a traumatic birth experience in their journey and want to talk about it and want to tell their story. So I'm uplifting and highlighting their stories so that we can tell this larger story collectively to create awareness. I not only use the photographs that are taken during the photo shoot beforehand, I also create studies that I depict from, sometimes it's a few photographs, and I'll leave the photographs as a point of departure and then work on the study. And the study, I'll improvise and use different palettes, or I'll, take one figure and place them in another part, another space in the composition, or I'll add different marks to them. And so the studies really kind of give me some freedom as to what image I'm trying to create and what story I want to tell through the imagery.
Yeah, and I'm appreciating the commitment. That feels like a through line in talking to you. The commitment to self-advocacy, advocating for others, and that, the volume is getting turned up on this. This is not when we pull the plug. Let's blow the roof off.
Yeah,
until everyone knows.
Yeah, we got to sound the alarm.
Do you ever picture the works that you create hanging in people's homes?
Yes. I mean, some of them hang in my home. They're in my home studio. And, I live with them too before I have to let them go. One of them in particular is kind of off to the side of my kitchen. And it's from my last series, Human Mother Black. And I've been living with it, and I see it every day. Every morning I go into the kitchen, and, it's a reminder, and I get more ideas from looking at it. I'm not overwhelmed when I look at it. I'm happy when I look at it. And so someone just inquired about it, and I've gotten to the point where, okay, I think I've lived with it long enough. I'm okay letting it go now. That's great. It should be in people's homes, but it also needs to be out in the world where people can see it. Everyone needs to have access to artwork.
That bittersweetness. Such a good word, right? Of someone's inquiring and I'm ready to let it go, but also wanting everyone to see it, to have a conversation around it. On that note, is there anything that you want to say to expectant mothers? We're talking about sort of the experience of giving birth and being pregnant. I've never had it myself, but the complexities are there. But anything you'd want to say to those who may be having a difficult pregnancy?
What I had mentioned before about trusting yourself, that's something that I learned throughout my process, my pregnancy journey. And in hindsight, looking back, I wish I had listened to myself even more so. Or listening to, your partner and your advocate that's with you, really taking into consideration their feelings too.
Yeah.
And if you think that something is wrong, find a healthcare professional that will listen to you and take you seriously. If they don't, change. Okay? Because it could be a matter of life and death. So don't take anything lightly. Insist on quality healthcare and keep supportive people around you who are going to help to advocate for you.
And if you can't, call me. There's this real, I don't know if it's the woman in me or if it's just the human in me, because I'm not a mother. I just can't stand the thought of anyone not getting quality care. It drives me nuts. Yeah. How do you want people to interact with you? You're public facing. You've got these ways people can, I think, stop through, see things out in the world. And then what's coming next? Those are the two questions we'll end with.
Well, people can definitely get in contact with me through my email address, art@ashleyjan.com, or my Instagram, which is ashleyjanart, or Ashley January. As far as what's coming next, I am working on another solo show, which could potentially happen at the end of this year, sometime in the fall, or maybe next year. We're still hammering out the date. Expo Chicago is going to be here. I'm not in Expo this year. Fingers crossed. Hopefully I'll get into it at some point in the future. And preparing for my solo show.
Okay. Look, we're here to help. I mean, I feel like there's a whole legion, not that you need more support, but like I feel like there's a whole legion of people you just inspired, not just to support you, but to support all the women
Yes.
and their partners and their families in like having the conversation and speaking up.
Yes, all the mothers
Thank
that
you.
participated in this project, that are participating and want to, they are sharing their stories because they want to help other mothers, babies, and families. You know, everybody should, this is part of the whole birth equity conversation. We want everyone to have access to quality health care. You know, it should be a norm. These statistics are unacceptable and we can do better. So, you know, let's work towards that.
Absolutely. Amen. Amen. Okay.
I love it.
As always, thank you so much for listening to Who's Missing. If you like this podcast, please subscribe and leave us a review. It only takes a few seconds and truly makes a huge difference. And if you want to hear from us more than just once a week, you can follow us on Instagram or check out our website where you can subscribe to our newsletter, read about our guests, check out a bunch of awesome resources, or send us a message if you have questions or comments. Feedback is welcome. Sounds great, right? Yeah, join us. What are you waiting for? Visit us at www.who'smissingpodcast.com or on IG at Who's Missing Podcast. Talk to you soon.